And our guests today are Fen Hampson, the Chancellor's Professor at Carleton University and President of the World Refugee and Migration Council, and Mike Blanchfield, the International Affairs Writer for the Canadian Press. They are the authors of the book, The Two Michaels, Innocent Canadian Captives and High-Stakes Espionage in the U.S.-China Cyber War. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
Thanks, guys.
In your book, you kind of talk about the differences between the arrests of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor versus Meng Wanzhou. What is the significance of that?
I think a great deal of planning and preparation went into, or transparent planning and preparation went into the arrest of Meng Wanzhou. And it generated, I guess, like a huge sort of public trail of information, of video, of court transcripts, documents. Just a public record eventually. I mean, not the actual takedown itself, but even that became a matter of public record later on. There were all these videos of her questioning in the airport and sort of this real life, voiceless drama that was sort of unfolding like, security camera stuff. Whereas the two Michaels just sort of disappeared. I remember working as a reporter in Ottawa covering this story, and it just appeared as an email, I think maybe from Foreign Affairs Department saying that Canadians missing, or one Canadian missing. Then a few days later, it was the second Canadian, even though it seems like this all happened pretty much simultaneously. So that's sort of the contrast there.
Why do you think they chose the two Michaels? Was it just like a situation where like the Communist Party sees, oh, they've arrested Meng Wanzhou. Quick, let's arrest some Canadians. Who do we choose? These guys, boom.
Well, there was a 9-day gap between the arrest of Meng and then the two Michaels. And in the intervening time, tempers flared. Chinese government was very upset. Policy experts, foreign affairs experts warned, there's going to be retaliation. Watch out. And eventually that did appear to happen, obviously. And as we explain in the book, too, I mean, these two people lived really sort of interesting lives that were tied to China. They were on the ground. They happened to be there. There was sort of a North Korea connection to their work. It's been suggested that, there was a good sort of good set of information to be used by someone that would want to say that, make a, sort of an allegation that these two Michaels were spies and that they were doing something that they weren't, and they were just there, I guess.
If I could just add to that, it's important to bear in mind when the arrest takes place. It takes place during the G20 summit that's being held in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And it occurred almost the same time that G20 leaders were having dinner, being wined and dined by their host. And at that dinner, Justin Trudeau was there. President Trump was there. From all reports, notwithstanding the fact that the U.S. and China were in a big trade war, he'd had a really good dinner with President Xi Jinping of China. They were getting along. It was all very friendly. Trudeau was, getting along as well. He'd been to China earlier to try to launch trade talks that hadn't gone very well. But in the interim period, Canada had organized a whole series of ministerial visits. And, the next thing one of China's leading ladies is being detained on extradition charges in Vancouver Airport. And, what we've heard is that when the U.S. president was told about this, I guess it was the next morning, Mike, at breakfast, he got it that, this wouldn't be taken very kindly by the Chinese leader who he just had dinner with. And, this was sort of publicly embarrassing China on the world stage with, this very high profile arrest. And I think it's fair to say, Canada was seen by the Chinese as being culpable, as being in cahoots with the Americans, and so the way it was described to us, by an unnamed Canadian official was, the Chinese, minions around the president of China figure they got to do something to, teach those Canadians a lesson. And, perhaps the best way to do it is to go after some, high profile, reasonably high profile guys who are, doing business in China. And important to remember that Michael Kovrig was a Canadian diplomat who was on leave from the government of Canada to work with the International Crisis Group. So he would have been on the Chinese radar big time, as a former diplomat, but still, he hadn't handed in his resignation. So I think it's fair to say, the boss was mad, and the guys around the boss are saying, we got to do something, to make the boss happy. And what better way to stick it to those Canadians than to arrest a bunch of Canadians, who we know are, doing, not-for-profit work in China and North Korea.
Mike, you had mentioned that people had said that there would be retaliation, but did it seem like the Canadian government was surprised by the form of the retaliation, by the fact that they arrested the two Michaels?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that when it happened, sure. And the one thing I know that is that after it happened, there was a real sense of not wanting to do any harm to these guys, and it was uncharted territory for any government, really. I mean, not that people get detained, and these things have happened before, but I think it caught the Canadian government particularly off guard in this case. And I think it really led to this whole sort of desire that we outline in the book to this, okay, we're going to play by the rules here. We're going to play by our rules. We're going to let that court case happen. We're going to give this person due process. We're going to talk to the Chinese about it and try to dial down the anger. But there was anger. I mean, there was anger on both sides as well. And that was really clear, months later when Canada appointed a new ambassador to China, a guy named Dominic Barton. We describe him in the book, and he was a very high-powered international business executive, lots of experience.
Former head of McKinsey,
yeah,
big company.
Yeah, McKinsey, yeah, managing director, real big wheel in business. He'd advised the Canadian government, the Liberal Trudeau government, on economics. He worked for their, did some advisory work for their finance minister. So he was known to the government. So they sent him to China to basically try to fix this and keep links open. And as Barton has described publicly, and it's in the book and great detail, it was just a big, heated, emotional blow-up when he first walked into the room. The Canadian side vented, the Chinese side vented, and Chinese, repurposed all their criticisms. You were a toady of the United States, and you should have known better. And anyway, Barton described it, as one of the most uncomfortable meetings he's ever had. And from that point, things kind of dialed down. I think as this kind of went on, I don't think anyone expected that there would be this legal process that took place in Canada that just went on and on and on. Because I think that, I'm just going to surmise that both sides would have thought, okay, maybe there's a way to get out of this sooner rather than later. And eventually it did happen with political intervention, really, from the United States. But the whole like metaphor for me for all of this, and as I've said, I've covered this since day one. I went to China with the Canadian Prime Minister a year before this happened, and I've covered the attempt to get trade talks between China and Canada, which has since failed. I've talked to Chinese government officials because you have to, right? I think people wanted to put this behind them, but it just became like this slow boil where that metaphor, that you put the frog in water and simmer it slowly. They don't realize it, and then they're fried. Whereas you throw someone in a pot of boiling water, or the frog in the boiling water, they'll jump out. And I mean, eventually it just came to the point where it had to get resolved, and it did, as we now know. But it was basically unprecedented. Canada felt extremely kind of isolated on the world stage. Donald Trump wasn't exactly their best friend. Other things are going on in the relationship. So they reached out to other allies, tried to get some support. Took a while, but it got going. But I mean, no one really. I mean, it was sort of. I mean, there have been hostage takings before in different contexts, and no one in Canada anyway had really.
Well, I think Canadians, sort of think of themselves as being nice people, and they would never do anything like this to us. There's a bit of naivete there.